Now, just like with everyone else, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu plays a significant role in the life of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. He's not just... Now the difference between Umar with Ibn Mas'ud and Umar with the other Abadila, with the other Abdullahs, is that Abdullah bin Mas'ud is more of a teacher to Umar ibn Khattab. Whereas with the others it was the opposite, where Umar was really their mentor. But when it comes to Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Ibn Mas'ud, it's just honoring him, respecting him, making the ummah respect him, making the ummah love him and honor him. So actually when Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu became Khalifa, he tried to appoint Ibn Mas'ud as a governor. Ibn Mas'ud said no. Then he tried to appoint him as a treasurer, the khazan of Baytul Mal, to be a treasurer of Baytul Mal. He said no. Then he tried to fix salaries. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu fixed salaries for the Sahaba, right? Particularly the veterans of Badr. He gave a salary from Baytul Mal. So when he tried to give it to Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, why are you trying to turn me to this world? Why are you trying to distract me with the dunya? I don't want it. Now he was on the shura of Umar ibn Khattab. We said the shura of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu it consisted of the veterans of Badr. So Abdullah bin Mas'ud is one of the veterans of Badr. So he's one of the shura of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. But naturally, because of the size of Ibn Mas'ud and because of how he looked, right, and because he didn't come from an honorable tribe, some people still had traces of ignorance in their heart, especially the next generation. They didn't have the tarbiyah of the Prophet ﷺ, the way the Prophet ﷺ raised them, so they wouldn't give him his full respect. So Umar radiallahu anhu, one time he was sitting in a gathering, and Ibn Mas'ud walked in. And people were staring at Ibn Mas'ud, but they were belittling him. They were staring at him for his height. Basically, the narration says very clearly they were staring at him because of how short he was, and they were kind of belittling him. And no one really moved for him, or no one really showed him respect. So Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he stood up and he said, Ahlan wa marhaban, right? Welcome to Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And he told Ibn Mas'ud to come and sit where he was sitting. And he went and he served Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu. وَضَحِكَ مَعَهُ, and he laughed with Ibn Mas'ud. He sat next to him and he laughed with him. وَأَكْرَمَهُ, and he honored him throughout the gathering. And then as Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu walked out, Umar pointed to him in front of everyone and said, مُلِئَ فِقْهًا. This is a man that's full of knowledge. He's full of fiqh. He's full of understanding. Don't belittle him with your eyesight. Don't not show him respect. And there's so many narrations of that. One time Umar radiallahu anhu was with Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and there was a young man that was dragging his thobe beneath his ankles. So I don't want to get into a fiqhi discussion here, but obviously it's prohibited to drag out of arrogance, by consensus, out of kibr, out of pride. It's prohibited to let your clothes go beneath your ankles. If it's not out of pride, that's where the difference of opinion is. But this young man was dragging his thobe under his ankles. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he looked at him and he said to him, oh young man, irfa' izarak, raise your izar, raise your cloth. So the man looked at him and kind of like, who do you think you are? This is a young guy, and he looked at him and said, who do you think you are to be talking to me? He said, Anta arfa' izarak, you should raise yours. Now Ibn Mas'ud was so small that sometimes his clothes would come beyond his ankles, even when he wasn't trying to, right? Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he took his durra, his stick, right? And he hit this young man. And he said, Ataruddu ala ibn Mas'ud? Are you responding to Ibn Mas'ud? Like, who do you think you are? So Umar actually took it very personally when Ibn Mas'ud was not respected. And there's a third narration even, that Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that Ibn Mas'ud was building a house for himself in Al-Madinah. This is under the khilaf of Umar. Ibn Mas'ud was putting together, he was building a house for himself. So Umar radiallahu anhu came and Umar started to help him. So there was a man that wanted Umar's attention. All right, he wanted to ask Umar something, but Umar saw Ibn Mas'ud needing help, so he went and he started helping Ibn Mas'ud. And he looked at him and he said, isn't that enough for him? Like, haven't you done enough for him? Umar radiallahu anhu threw a brick at him. And he says, Atarghabu bi an Abdullah, are you trying to take me away from Abdullah bin Mas'ud? Like, watch your mouth, And subhanAllah, this is consistent. Like, incident after incident after incident. Do not disrespect Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu in front of me. Right? Because of his size and because of his social status and things of that sort. He knows what Ibn Mas'ud meant to the Prophet ﷺ, and he knows the status of Ibn Mas'ud in this ummah. Now, interestingly enough, Kufa and Iraq was giving Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu a hard time. Every time he sent a governor to Kufa, they gave him a hard time and they asked for him to replace the governor. And Umar would go to Iraq, he'd go to Kufa and he'd monitor them and he'd listen to the complaints and so on and so forth. So Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he got frustrated with them. And he said to them, look, I'm going to send you Ibn Mas'ud. I'm going to send you Ibn Mas'ud. Because if I send you Ibn Mas'ud and you people give him problems, then I'll know that you're wrong. Right? If you make any claim against Ibn Mas'ud, then I'll know that you're lying and I'll know that you're wrong. So he goes to Ibn Mas'ud and he convinces Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, finally explains to him the situation. He says to him, I need you for this. And Ibn Mas'ud finally agrees to go and be the governor in Kufa. And the words that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, he says, وَوَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ آثَرْتُكُمْ بِعَبْدِ اللَّهِ بْنِ مَسْعُودٍ عَلَى نَفْسِي. He said, I swear by Allah that I gave you the right. I chose you over myself. I gave you the right to take Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, though I can't bear to live without him. One narration he says, I can't bear to live without him. I can't live without Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. But I'm sending him to you, and so that you won't be able to complain anymore. And subhanAllah, Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, when he was there, no one complained about him. When he was in Kufa, when he was the governor there, when he got there, he wasn't a pushover. It's not that he was a pushover, right? There are several narrations. One of a man by the name of Ibn Aqaba, who used to lead them in salah over there. And Ibn Aqaba, would come extremely late to the salah, not like 2, 3, 4 minutes, like an hour, 2 hours to the salah to lead them in salah, and he'd leave the people waiting in the masjid. And so Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he removed him from that position. He was a powerful man in Kufa. So when he demanded an explanation, Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu said that Allah doesn't like the salah delayed for you. Why should the people wait for you in the masjid? So he didn't tolerate certain practices of the people of Kufa, and he did put people in their place. But what Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu did was he taught the people of Kufa the Quran. He basically just taught them Quran. He went there as a governor, but he just taught them Quran. And so every time Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu would ask for reports on Kufa, they would say that people are memorizing Quran. When Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu was there, people were just memorizing Quran. He's making everybody memorize the Quran. He's making everyone learn the Quran. And there's a very beautiful narration that one time there was a group of people that were passing through Medina, and it was in the middle of the night. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he was alarmed. He went out right away to see who they were, and it was pitch black. Okay. And he asked them, min ayn al-qawm, where are you people coming from? So they said, min fajjin amiq, from a deep valley. All right, from a deep valley. He said, wa ila ayn, where to? They said, ila al-bayt al-atiq. All right, to the Kaaba. But they used the expression of the Quran, al-bayt al-atiq. Okay, so they responded with Quran both times. So Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he told Abdullah ibn Umar, he said, there's a alim amongst them, there's a scholar amongst them. I mean, these people are obviously, they know the Quran to where they're responding with Quranic terminology. So he asked them, Ayyul Qur'ani a'zam? What's the greatest part of the Quran? Umar is testing these people now on the Quran. He's amused by these people. So they all say, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum, la ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm, until the end of the ayah. They all respond with Ayatul Kursi. Right? They all know Ayatul Kursi. So that's impressive. So he's like, wow, okay, without any hesitation. He says, and what part of the Quran establishes al-adl? Give me something from the Quran that establishes justice. They all responded, Inna Allah ya'muru bil-adli wal-ihsan wa ita'i dhil-qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal-munkari wal-baghi, until the end of the ayah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands that which is just and that which is fair. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu then said, he's really amused by his people. He says, what do you think is the most comprehensive ayah in the Quran? What's the most comprehensive ayah in the Quran? So they said, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. That whoever does an atom's worth of good will see it, and whoever does an atom's worth of evil will see it. And he said, what part of the Quran gives you hope? Al-amal, what gives you hope? So they said, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. The ayah in Surah Az-Zumar that was the favorite ayah of who? Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. Okay? It's his favorite ayah, right? So they all responded that say, "O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, don't despair from the mercy of Allah. Allah Azza wa Jal forgives all sins, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most forgiving and the most merciful." Whenever they answered that, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu said, "Afikum Abdullah bin Mas'ud?" Do you have Abdullah bin Mas'ud amongst you? قالوا اللهم نعم. They said, by Allah, yes. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now the way that this is described, and again, just think of the image. They said that Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu, that Umar bin Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu got so happy and so excited, he started pushing the people out the way to try to find Abdullah bin Mas'ud. Like he started going through the rows, and he found Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He took Abdullah bin Mas'ud by the hand, he kissed him on the forehead, and he sat down on the ground. Now we said that Ibn Mas'ud is the same height as a person when they're sitting down. Omar is not an average person, so Omar would actually be bigger. I really want you to imagine this image. Omar would actually be bigger than Ibn Mas'ud, even as he was sitting down, but he sits down, كَطَالِبِ عِلْم, like a student of knowledge, and he starts asking Ibn Mas'ud questions. And he held up the whole, that whole group of people for like 2-3 hours. He held them up for hours, asking Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu questions. Finally, when Fajr was getting near, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he finally got up and he left Ibn Mas'ud and he said, كُنَيِّفٌ مُلِئَ عِلْمًا. Right? Kunayif is like a teapot. He's like a teapot full of ilm, full of knowledge, right? The way that he means, like he's small, but he's full of ilm. Like he's smiling and he's laughing to me. So it's Kunayifun muli'a ilma. That he's full of knowledge, right? He might be small, but he's full of knowledge. And he's leaving all happy and excited. So subhanAllah, when it comes to Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu loves him so much, and he gives him his position, and he holds him in high regard. And there's another incident that once someone came from Kufa. I'll give you 2 more from Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Someone came from Kufa and he said that there is a man in Kufa who writes mushafs from his head. Now Umar radiallahu anhu forbade that. Even if you're a hafiz, you need to write. Make sure, just so that you don't make a mistake, make sure that you're writing from one into another. So Umar radiallahu anhu forbade people writing from their memory. So whenever the man said that, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu got so angry. Ghadiba, right? He got so angry. Man huwa? Who is it? Who is this person? The guy said, Abdullah bin Mas'ud. Umar radiallahu anhu immediately calmed down. He said, why didn't you say so? Right? Why didn't you say so? So if it's Ibn Mas'ud, it's okay, because no one knows the Quran better than him. So Ibn Mas'ud can write a mushaf from his head. I don't mind. No one else though. Okay? And there was another person who came from Iraq to ask Umar a question. Alright? A fiqh question. And Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, أَتَسْأَلُونَنِي وَفِيكُمْ صَاحِبُ السِّوَادَيْنِ وَصَاحِبُ النَّعْلَيْنِ. You're coming all the way from there to ask me, and you have amongst you Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the keeper of the secrets of the Prophet ﷺ, and the keeper of the sandals of the Prophet ﷺ. So subhanAllah, Umar radiallahu anhu holds him in very high esteem, as does the ummah. And Ibn Abbas's nickname was what?